The afternoon sun shone brightly over the crowded marketplace. The streets were filled with the sounds of sellers calling out their prices, carts rolling over uneven stones, and people rushing about their daily business. In the middle of all this noise and movement, a little girl walked slowly, almost unnoticed. Her name was Lena. She was small, barefoot, and dressed in a simple faded dress that was too big for her. Her hair, once soft and shiny, now hung in loose strands over her tired little face. Lena's eyes, however, were different. They were bright, full of a quiet strength that no one noticed. Those eyes had seen more than most children her age ever did. She had learned very early that the world could be kind sometimes, but most of the time it was not. Her parents had passed away when she was very young, and since then, she had learned to survive on her own. There was no warm home waiting for her, no kitchen where someone cooked for her, no soft bed to sleep in at night. The street was her home, the cold ground was her bed, and strangers were the only faces she saw. Every morning, Lena would walk through the market, hoping to do little chores to earn some coins. Sometimes, she helped carry bags. Sometimes, she swept the corners of small shops. Other times, she just waited, watching, hoping that someone might offer her a small piece of bread. Most days, she went hungry, but she had learned to keep walking, to keep smiling, and to keep hoping. This day was harder than most. Lena had not eaten since yesterday afternoon. Her stomach made soft, painful sounds as if it were asking her why she had not given it food. She pressed her hand gently against her little belly, but the feeling of emptiness only grew stronger. She had walked almost the entire market, but no one had given her a job or a single coin. A few people had brushed past her without even looking. Others had told her to go away. She didn't blame them. She knew they were busy with their lives. But her hunger was not something she could simply ignore. As the sun climbed higher, the heat became stronger. Sweat rolled down her forehead. She sat down near a small tree on the side of the market and watched the crowd. In front of her was a tiny grocery shop. It wasn't the biggest shop in the market, but it was always full of people. She often passed by it in the mornings and saw jars of sugar, milk cans, and baskets of bread. And today, as she sat there, she noticed something she had never noticed before. On the counter, next to the jars, was a small pot of milk. The white milk looked fresh. A silver spoon rested inside the pot. Customers came and went, and the shopkeeper was busy weighing rice and sugar for them. No one was paying attention to that pot of milk. Lena looked at it, and her heart began to beat a little faster. She wasn't thinking about anything big. She wasn't planning to do anything wrong. She just thought of one thing: if she could get a single spoon of that milk, maybe her empty stomach would stop hurting for a while. But her feet did not move right away. She sat there, staring at the pot, and many thoughts ran through her little head. What if someone saw her? What if the shopkeeper shouted at her? What if people got angry? She lowered her eyes to the ground, feeling scared. She had always tried to be a good child. Her parents had taught her never to take what wasn't hers. But hunger had a way of making a person weak, and Lena was only a child. A gentle wind passed through the market, lifting a few strands of her hair from her face. She took a deep breath. She thought of her mother for a moment, a memory that always made her feel safe. She imagined her mother's gentle hands holding hers, whispering, "Be strong, my little one." Those words gave her a tiny bit of courage. She slowly stood up and walked closer to the shop. The ground was warm under her feet, and the air was filled with the smell of spices and freshly baked bread. Her small shadow followed her as she stepped closer to the counter. People were busy talking and buying things. The shopkeeper's back was turned. The spoon of milk was right there. Lena's hands were shaking. She reached out carefully, quietly, as if even the air could make a sound. Her heart was beating so loudly she thought someone would hear it. She gently dipped the spoon into the pot and lifted it to her lips. It was just one spoon, warm, soft, and sweet. As the milk touched her tongue, a wave of relief spread through her tiny body. For the first time that day, she felt a little less empty inside. She closed her eyes for just a second. letting the warm taste remind her of the days long ago, when her mother used to give her a cup of milk at night before she slept. Back then, the world felt big but kind. Back then, she had a home. But just as quickly as the feeling came, it was gone. A loud voice snapped through the air like a rope being pulled tight. "Hey, what are you doing there?" Lena opened her eyes, her hand frozen with the spoon still close to the pot. The shopkeeper had turned around. His eyebrows were raised, and his voice was sharp. The people around looked up. Lena's heart sank into her feet. For a moment, she didn't know what to do. She didn't run. She didn't speak. She just stood there, her eyes wide, her small frame trembling. She tried to say something, to explain, but her throat felt dry. The shopkeeper's face tightened, and more people began to look. The quiet corner of the shop suddenly became the center of everyone's attention. The shopkeeper walked forward, still holding a bag of sugar in one hand. He looked down at the little girl and the spoon. "What's this?" he asked, his voice firm but not loud anymore. "Why are you touching that?" Lena tried to speak, but all that came out was a small whisper. "I was just—" Her voice broke off. She lowered her head, unable to meet his eyes. The crowd around began to whisper. Some people looked annoyed. Some were curious. A few shook their heads. Lena felt their eyes on her like tiny stones being thrown. She wished she could disappear into the ground. She wished someone would understand. The shopkeeper sighed. He wasn't a bad man, but he was strict and believed in rules. He told her softly but clearly, "This is not yours. You can't just take things like that." His words, though not shouted, felt heavy to Lena. She nodded quickly, tears filling her eyes. She hadn't meant to cause trouble. She hadn't taken a cup or a bowl, just one spoon. But she knew that didn't make it right. One of the women from the crowd said, "Poor child. She must be hungry." Another man replied, "Still, she can't just take things without asking." The voices around her grew louder. Some were soft, some were cold. Lena felt smaller and smaller with every word. The shopkeeper pointed to the side of the street and told her to leave. "Go," he said. "You can't stand here anymore." Lena nodded again, her face hot with shame. She took a few steps back, holding her little hands close to her chest. She didn't cry loudly. Her tears rolled down quietly, like rain that no one hears at night. She walked to the edge of the market and sat down again near the tree where she had been earlier. The crowd slowly went back to their business. The sound of the market returned, the shouts, the footsteps, the clinking of coins. But inside Lena's heart, everything was quiet. She felt alone, more than she had ever felt before. She touched her lips with her fingers, remembering the warm taste of that single spoon of milk. She had not taken it because she wanted to do something wrong. She had taken it because she was hungry, so hungry that her little hands had forgotten their fear. For just a second as she sat there, the sun began to lower a little, making the shadows longer on the ground. Her stomach still hurt, and her tears had dried on her cheeks. People walked past her without looking. She didn't ask anyone for help. She just sat quietly, hugging her knees. Somewhere inside, a small part of her still believed that life could be kind. She didn't know it yet, but someone had noticed what had happened. Someone who saw not a thief but a child. Someone whose heart was different from the others around. At that moment, Lena didn't see him. She didn't know that her life was about to change in a way she could never imagine. She only knew the feeling of hunger, the sound of the market, and the memory of her mother's warm smile. She didn't know that kindness was walking toward her, step by step, hidden behind the noise of the world. The little girl sat alone, her back against the tree, the sky slowly turning a soft orange. The world moved on round her, but for Lena, time felt still. She was only a child, tired and hungry, with nothing in her hands except hope, a small, quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, tomorrow would be different. But sometimes, tomorrow doesn't wait. Sometimes, it arrives quietly, wrapped in a moment you never expect. And for Lena, that moment was just around the corner. Lena sat under the small tree with her knees tucked close to her chest. The sun was beginning to set, turning the sky into soft shades of gold and pink. The busy market was still alive with people, but to Lena, everything felt quiet. She had learned to sit alone, without expecting anyone to stop for her. People passed by her like the wind, there, but never truly seeing her. She gently pressed her hand against her stomach. It still ached from hunger. She thought about the spoon of milk again. She wasn't sorry because it tasted good. She was sorry because it had made people look at her as if she was something bad. That feeling hurt more than her empty stomach. As she wiped her eyes with the back of her small hand. A pair of polished black shoes stopped near her feet. She lifted her head slowly. A tall man stood in front of her. His clothes were neat, his hair carefully brushed back, and his face was calm. He didn't look like the other people who rushed past her all day. There was something quiet but kind in his eyes. The man knelt down so that his eyes were level with hers. He didn't speak at first. He just looked at her gently, not with anger, not with pity, but with something warm, something she had not seen in a long time. Finally, he said in a soft voice, "Little one, are you hungry?" Lena didn't answer with words. Her small nod was enough. The man smiled, not the kind of smile that disappears quickly, but the kind that warms the heart. He reached into the brown leather bag he carried and took out a small bottle of milk. "Here," he said kindly, "this is for you. Drink slowly." Her tiny hands trembled as she took the bottle. She held it close to her chest for a moment, almost afraid it would disappear. Then, carefully, she lifted it to her lips and drank. The milk was cool and sweet, and it filled her empty stomach like gentle sunshine on a cold morning. For the first time that day, her body felt a little stronger. The man watched her quietly. He didn't rush her or ask too many questions. When she finished drinking, he asked, "What's your name?" "Lena," she whispered softly. "Lena," he repeated with a smile. "That's a beautiful name. My name is Mr. Raymond." His voice had a calm strength that made her feel safe without knowing why. "Where are your parents, Lena?" he asked gently. She lowered her eyes and shook her head. She didn't have to explain. He understood. He didn't ask anything more. Instead, he looked around at the crowded market where people walked past, not noticing the little girl sitting under the tree. Then he looked back at her with a thoughtful expression. "Come with me," he said softly. "I will make sure you don't have to sleep hungry anymore." Lena blinked in surprise. No one had ever said something like that to her before. She had spent so many nights alone, watching families walk past her, listening to laughter she wasn't part of. She had learned not to expect anything from anyone. So even though she heard his words, a small part of her wondered if it was real. But when Mr. Raymond held out his hand, something inside her told her to trust him. Slowly, shyly, she placed her small hand into his. His hand was warm, and in that moment, she felt a feeling she hadn't felt in a long time: safety. They walked out of the market together. The setting sun painted long shadows on the ground as they moved through the streets. Lena kept glancing up at him, half expecting him to let go of her hand. But he didn't. His steps were steady and strong, and hers were small but brave. A short walk later, they reached a large house with a wide gate. It wasn't just a house, it was a home, with lights glowing warmly from the windows and a small garden that smelled like flowers. Lena's eyes widened. She had never stood in front of a place like this before. A kind woman opened the door and greeted Mr. Raymond with a smile. When she saw Lena, her smile softened even more. "Who is this little one?" she asked gently. "This is Lena," Mr. Raymond said. "She will be staying here with us for now." The woman bent down so she could see Lena's face. "Welcome, Lena," she said kindly. "My name is Grace. You must be very tired." Her voice felt like a warm blanket round Lena's heart. Grace took Lena inside, gave her warm water to wash her face and hands, and brought her to the dining table. There was food, soft bread, soup, and a warm cup of milk. Lena's eyes filled with tears. She had never sat at a table like this. She ate slowly, almost carefully, as if the food might vanish if she moved too fast. Mr. Raymond and Grace didn't rush her. They simply sat with her, talking softly to each other. They didn't treat her like a stranger. They treated her like someone who belonged. When she was full, Grace showed her a small room with a bed. A real bed, soft, With clean sheets and a warm blanket, Lena sat on the edge of the bed, not sure what to do. She touched the blanket with her small fingers, as if testing if it was real. She had slept on cold floors for so long that a soft bed felt like a dream. Rest now, Grace said kindly. Tomorrow will be a new day. Lena lay down, her small head sinking into the pillow. For the first time in a very long time, she felt safe. She closed her eyes and whispered softly, "Thank you." That night, she slept deeply. No loud noises, no cold wind, no fear. Only warmth. Days turned into weeks. Mr. Raymond didn't just give Lena food and a bed. He gave her something even more precious, a new beginning. He arranged for her to go to school, to learn and play with other children. At first, Lena was shy. She didn't speak much in class. She wasn't used to being around people her age. But slowly, with the help of kind teachers and new friends, she began to smile again. Mr. Raymond visited her school often. He was known in the city as a kind and successful man. People respected him not because he was rich, but because he had built everything with hard work and never forgot where he came from. He often said, "The world is not kind to everyone, but we can choose to be kind to someone." He saw something in Lena, a quiet strength, the same strength he had when he was young. He told her one day, "When I was your age, I'd had days when I had nothing. Someone helped me. Now I help others. One day, Lena, you will help someone too." Those words stayed with her. She worked hard in school, learned quickly, and grew into a bright and kind-hearted girl. She never forgot where she came from or the pain of being hungry and alone. But she also never forgot the day someone reached out a hand and changed her life. Years passed like pages in a book. Lena grew taller, her smile brighter. She finished her studies with good marks and continued learning. With every step she took, she carried gratitude in her heart. She often visited the market where her story began, not to remember pain, but to remind herself how far she had come. When she turned 18, Lena made a decision. She wanted to help children like her, those who were alone, hungry, and had nowhere to go. With the support of Mr. Raymond, she opened a small shelter home. It was simple at first, just a few rooms with beds and warm food. But the walls were filled with kindness. Every evening, children came to the shelter, tired, scared, and hungry, just like she had been once. Lena welcomed them with a smile and warm food. She told them softly, "You are safe here." She never asked them to prove anything. She just gave them what she once needed most: care, kindness, and hope. Mr. Raymond often visited the shelter. He was older now, but his smile was the same. He watched Lena working with the children and felt proud. "I knew you would do something special," he said one day, sitting beside her as children laughed and played around them. Lena looked at him with grateful eyes. "You gave me a chance when no one else would," she said softly. He shook his head gently. "No, Lena, I only gave you a hand. You did the rest. You grew, you worked hard, and you became the light for others." That night, Lena walked through the shelter, checking on the children. Some were sleeping soundly in their beds. Some were whispering to each other under their blankets. She saw in their faces the same fear and hope she once carried. And she knew deep in her heart that this was her purpose, to make sure no child felt alone. The way she once did. As she stood by the window, looking at the soft glow of the street lights, she thought of the day long ago when she had taken a spoon of milk and felt the world turn cold. That day had been the hardest of her young life, but it was also the day kindness had found her. Sometimes, one small moment can change everything. One act of kindness, one helping hand, one warm smile. For Lena, it had been Mr. Raymond's kindness. For these children, it was hers. She whispered to herself, "Thank you," not just to him, but to life, for giving her a second chance. She knew now that kindness was like a small spark. It could grow, and when it did, it could light up many lives. The shelter grew over the years. More people joined her mission. Some gave money, some gave time, some gave love. The little house became a big home filled with laughter, warmth, and hope. Lena never forgot who she was. She never forgot the little girl sitting under the tree with hunger in her eyes, and she made sure no child ever had to feel that way again. Mr. Raymond watched her journey with pride. He saw the child he had once helped become a strong woman with a kind heart, and every time he saw her smile, he felt his own heart smile to Dot. And so, the story that began with a spoon of milk, a small, simple moment, became a story of hope, kindness, and new beginnings.